This is simultaneously my favorite video to do of the entire year, and it's also the one that gives me the most stress and anxiety. We're talking about my favorite books of 2025. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brie and this is 4 Paws in a Book. That's right, it's time to talk about the best books of 2025. I love making this video. I love looking back on it. I have done a best books of the year every single year I have been on BookTube since 2018, which is a long time. And I feel like my reading has obviously changed and evolved so much over the years, but one thing stays constant. When I love a book, I do get obsessed with it, and that is no exception this year. I don't think that anyone is going to question the books that are at the top of the list. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised by any of them. Much like last year, I kind of became obsessed with it, and I'm not going to apologize for that at all. Now, I had 28 5-star reads this year, and I also had 19 4.5-star reads, and there are actually some 4.5-star reads on this list that made it over some other 5-star reads. And like, listen, when I make the list at the end of the year, it's all vibes. I loved the way that I rated books this year. I took away the like caw-pile style of like rating things based on different categories. I just kind of like finished the book and I was like, yep, it's a 4-star. Yep, it's a 5-star. And honestly, the vibes kind of worked this year. I think I had my highest average reading year in quite some time. I will go back and look at like stats and things like that, but it just feels like a better year. It feels like it was a really good reading year. I definitely DNF'd more that I didn't think was going to work for me or that would be kind of mid. And so you'll see the number of books that I rated lower not as high as in previous years, which I'm really excited about. Today we're not talking about stats, we're not doing a year-end review. I will be doing that one next week for my BookTube anniversary, which is on January 9th. So it's coming out really soon. But today I just want to talk about my favorite books. I want to hype up these books. I want to celebrate them. I want to get excited. I want you to get excited about them. Now, these are not necessarily books that came out in 2025. I just read them this year. And in previous years, I always had a rule that ARCs for 2026 couldn't be on this list. And you know what? A book made that exception this year. I made an exception to the rule for it, and you're going to see it in a little bit. I'm very excited about it, but I have a top 10. And let me tell you, finding that top 10, that was hard. It's hard every single year. Like, I know what number 1 is. I kind of know like where the middle is, and things kind of move around. Even as I was stacking the books, I was like, nah, maybe this one's here. So anyways, I have a top 10, but I also have 5 honorable mentions. Just because I want to talk about the reading experience that I had with them, the feelings that I had while reading, and just at the end of the year, they still stick with me. Even if like they may not have been perfect books, I still think about them fondly, so they're gonna be mentioned here. If I have videos for them, if I vlogged them, I will link them down below and up above if I can. If I remember, if I don't, please somebody bug me in the comments. But let's start with the honorable mentions. The first one is going to be Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. I reread the entire Empyrean series, or like Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and then read Onyx Storm like almost back to back at the beginning of the year, and that was such a fun experience for me. I also read this on release day. I took off work, I had sprints, we read it with my Patreon and Cassidy and Mel and Lexi and Tori, I believe, was all like, we were all reading it together, and it was just so much fun. We had Discord channels, we were chatting, we had theories, I had emotions, I had feelings. I did vlog this one, and I did like a single book vlog, which I never do, and it was just such a fun experience. And so like, while I did give this 5 stars, part of that is probably just because of the experience, because of the like environment that I was in when I was reading it. But when it comes to like the reading experience, I absolutely loved this. This is the 3rd book in the Empyrean series. We're really starting to see how big the world is getting. We're going to different places. We're seeing the lore and the magic of the dragons. We're seeing the revolution. We're seeing the corruption of the government. And this is just, it's getting so big and so fantastic. Next up, I have The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is another book that kind of took me by surprise. It's not necessarily a writing style that I love as much. Like, it's kind of purple prosy. It is very poetic. Like the smut scene in this actually really sticks out to me because of how poetic and how like atmospheric it is. It's not like meant to be this smutty, raunchy experience. It was really supposed to be like, I don't even know how to say it, but it was poetry. It was essentially poetry, and it was so beautiful. This is kind of like, if you like The Witcher, like specifically the TV show, I haven't read the book, so I don't know. But if you like The Witcher, I think you'll like this book. It has a very similar vibe to it. And this is very much a fantasy that has a romance subplot to it. And this book is really polarizing. I've seen it on best of list and I've seen it on worst of list. And I completely understand why it's on both of them. I think that people going into this thinking it was romance like might have been a little bit disappointed. It's definitely like a fantasy story, but I will definitely be reading more from Rachel Gillick. I have put her second book in this series on my anticipated releases for 2026, and I'm excited to go back into this world. It's just a beautiful, beautiful time. Okay, another book that kind of came out of nowhere. It was very popular on BookTube and BookTok, but I wasn't sure I was going to love it, and that is Dire Bound by Sable Sorensen, and let me tell you, I loved it. I had so much fun with this. This is a thick boy, okay? Okay? It's a thick, thick book. And I think I read this book in maybe 24 hours. I remember it was like during the summer, so I was doing a lot of gardening. I was out in the yard. I would just like listen to the audiobook, and I'd just like sit there in the flower bed, and Derek would come up to me and be like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to be working. Sorry." I was just like sitting here so immersed in this story. It has a very Fourth Wing feel to it, except that instead of dragons, we have dire wolves, which I think is a really unique and interesting perspective. And we have a lot of politics in it. We have a lot of like courtroom drama, which is one of my favorite things in romantasy. I think finding romantasy was one of the best things that ever could happen to my reading, because I love romance. I love it when two people or more are together and they are discovering themselves with another person. But I also love the fantasy aspect of books. I love the politics. I love the courtrooms. I love the back and forth, the backstabbing, the wars, everything else that goes along with a fantasy. So when you can mix those two together so seamlessly, chef's kiss. I'm obsessed with it, and I'm so obsessed with the genre, if you couldn't tell. This book has a scene that has such a phenomenal plot twist to it, and if you know, you know, okay? And also, if you didn't think it was like so astonishing and you kind of knew it was happening, please just don't ruin it for me. I was astonished. I was grocery shopping when that happened. I was listening to the audiobook, and I audibly gasped. I'm sure that people around me in the grocery store thought I was a lunatic. And then I like rewound it a little bit because I was like, wait a minute, that happened? And I love when a book can do that. I love when a book can surprise me. I read so much, and I also have ADHD, and so I can pick up on pattern recognition really, really well. I can usually figure out where a story is going, and so when an author can surprise me like that, it's an automatic win for me. Okay, this is the second year in a row that a Freida McFadden book is showing up on my honorable mentions for the best of the year, and this is another one that really surprised me, and that is The Tenant. This is my favorite book that I read from her this year. I read a couple of them. This one might be my favorite one that I read. I think that this one went in completely different directions. Here's the thing. Freida McFadden is known for her wild endings, her wild twist, and you almost like kind of expect the unexpected. But even this, we had the unexpected / expected twist that I was like, okay, this feels like Freida. It's, you know, it's a little bit formulaic, but it was still such a fun time. But then the end, like the last chapter, I love when I have a visceral emotion to a book where I remember even months down the road where I was, what I was doing when I was either reading or listening to the book. And this one, I remember I was finishing the book on my way to work one morning. I had a pretty long commute, and there's about a 5-minute gap between the time where I get off the freeway and when I pulled into the office. And I vividly remember as I was getting on the off-ramp, finishing this book and the final twist happening, and my jaw was on the floor. Not literally, but like it was on the floor. And I sat in silence for those 5 minutes instead of like, you know, finding my next audiobook or whatever, even just like turning on the radio. I sat in silence until I pulled into the parking lot. I was able to record my reaction for this vlog, and it was, oh, it was so good. So if you know, you know. Please don't spoil it in the comments if you don't and you're at all interested in a Freida book. This one I think would be a good one to start with, especially if like The Housemaid doesn't necessarily sound as appealing to you because it's gotten so popular. This one's better than The Housemaid. And then my last honorable mention, I'm putting it it on here simply because it is so different than what I would have expected. Or rather, the concept of the book doesn't sound like it would be a Brie book, but it just hit all of the right feels and really helped me with my reading slump that I had this fall. And it was just such a sweet, cozy, funny book, which doesn't sound like it would be a Brie book, but it somehow was. That's Best Hex Ever by Nadia El Fassi. This is a paranormal witchy romance that I read during the Halloween season, and let me tell you, it's so cute. It's quirky. It has, like, the house is a character. The house, like, knows what you need, and it just kind of, like, things appear. And, like, there was this one little scene where he brings her back home and he has a dog, and the dog, like, falls asleep in this dog bed. And as he's getting ready to leave, he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My dog, like, fell asleep in your dog bed. Like, I didn't mean for that to happen." And she goes, "We don't have a dog." And, like, the house was like, "Oh, the dog needs a bed so he can go to sleep." And he just made a dog bed appear. And that was just so cute. It's very British. It has a very dry sense of British humor. And it's also about a witchy wedding, which, like, if you know anything about weddings and rom-coms, everything is gonna just fall apart and there's gonna be a lot of shenanigans, but then you add in, like, the witchiness of it and even more things fall apart and there's even more shenanigans. And let me tell you, it was a good time. It was so much fun to read, and that's why it's getting an honorable mention spot. Okay, let's move into the top 10. These are ranked. However, if I were to have made this video tomorrow, the ranking might have been different for some of these spots. But this is what we're doing. This is where we're locking it in. I also need you to know that Doyle and Schmidt are literally right below me, right below the tripod. So I really hope they don't get up quickly, and I really hope that Doyle doesn't start snoring. That's really hard to fix in editing. But let's talk about number 10. And when I tell you this is probably the most surprising one on here, Ali Hazelwood is making an appearance on the best books of 2025 with Deep End. This is by far my favorite Ali Hazelwood book that I've read. It was so good. Okay, I know it gets a little bit of hate. I know that it's not everyone's favorite. I will be an out loud proud supporter of Deep End. I will love this book for all of you. This book is a spin-off of the original STEMinist novels that she wrote. The characters from The Love Hypothesis do make a cameo in here, but this is about two college students, and they're messy. Like, let me tell you, they are messy. They are discovering BDSM, they're discovering kink, they're discovering what they like in sexual relationships, and it's so real, it's raw, it's like, they don't know what they're doing, they don't have any idea what's going on, like, they think they know what they're doing, but they don't, and it really drew me back into my college days when I thought I knew everything, but I absolutely did not. And I think beyond the romantic relationship that we also had these friendships that were really messy too. And sometimes you have these friendship breakups and you have these, you know, spats and disagreements between friends, and that can hurt almost as much as a relationship ending. And I think that drawing attention to that was really highlighted in here and done in a really clever way, but also a really heartwarming way. This really reignited the spark that I needed for Ali Hazelwood because I was ready to give up, okay? Like, most of her books that I read were, like, either fine or I didn't love them. There was nothing special about a lot of them, and so many people love them, and I was like, what am I missing? But here, this is the one that did it for me. I will read more from her. I'm not done with her. I don't know that I will read any more of, like, the paranormal ones, but her contemporary romances, I'm not done with her yet. Coming in at number 9 is a relatively recent release for me, and that is Our Vicious Oaths by Annie Davenport. This book I read for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I was so sad that it ended up in 20th place because this one was so good. It was different than a lot of romantasy that I've read, but also really similar. And I know that sounds really confusing, and, like, I don't know what I'm talking about, I promise. It makes sense in my head. It almost has this, like, nostalgic romantasy or epic fantasy feel to it, but then also with, like, really hot smut. Like, there's a lot of smut in this one. It's a very smutty book, and so if you aren't someone who likes smut in the first half of the book, maybe this won't work for you. I loved seeing the like physical connection that happened, and then the emotional connection happened because of the physical connection. And that's usually backwards from when you normally see a romance build. Normally you see a book where the two characters are like, you know, slowly yearning for each other and it's a slow burn, and then they get to the point where like they can't not do it. This one kind of went the other direction. We start with a one night stand and then he comes and saves her, essentially. There's a red wedding in this book, okay? Like for you Game of Thrones fans, there's a red wedding in this book. And that's kind of the catalyst of this whole story and what drives our main character for the rest of the book. And I think one of the things that like I really loved about this book was how she uses sex and her sexuality. She uses her position and therefore uses sex as both a weapon and a shield. She uses it like to kind of protect herself emotionally, just because she's like, I can give you my body, but I'm not giving you my soul, my heart. And you know, she kind of also uses it as a weapon. Like, she knows she's hot. She knows that people want her. And, you know, it was kind of badass. Should I talk to my therapist about this? Probably. But I'd rather just find more badass female characters who know who they are. And when I say that the emotional connection comes after the sexual connection or the physical connection, there is a smut scene that happens about 2/3 of the way in where like she does emotionally let herself kind of be her true and authentic self and really lets her walls down accidentally. Like, it happens during a smut scene, and it's kind of like, you know, when you're in a new relationship and you accidentally say I love you, and then you're like, oh, that was it. That was a heat of the moment kind of thing. It's like that, except for with like magical powers. And it was so satisfying, and I want more people to read this book. It was an absolute joy to read. I'm sad that it's only a standalone, but I will 100% read whatever else she writes. Okay, number 8 is a wild card. Number 8 is one that I found completely on a whim and kind of got obsessed with. I did buy the rest of the series. I haven't read any more of the series, but I will be reading it. It's dark romance, and I found it right at the beginning of my like dark romance journey this year, and so I'm kind of using this as like that foundation, that pillar of dark romance that I'm really wanting to find more of in 2026. That is Muses and Monsters by Rose Gravestone. Now, the reason why I found this book, it's not something that I've like ever seen anyone talk about on BookTube, but I found the author on TikTok, but she did these skits with her narrator, and they were so hot. They were like, they would read lines from it, and he, you know, he says good girl and that kind of thing, and like pushes her up against the wall, and I was like, I have to read this book. This book does not have an audiobook. It is almost 600 pages of a dark Y-Choose romance, and I read this while I was in Denver for a work trip, and I remember like downloading it onto my phone on Kindle, because when I was on breaks in these panels, I was literally just sitting there, instead of like, you know, scrolling social media during the breaks like everyone else did, or like checking their emails and stuff, I was sitting there reading dark romance at a food safety convention, and like, if that's not the most Brie thing in the entire world, I don't know what is. But I had so much fun with this book. It is hot. It is sexy. And it's about this woman who is a dancer at a college, and then there are two guys that are very different from each other, and they are fighting for her. They are trying to protect her from different things that are happening. It's obviously like a dark, almost like mafia adjacent romance. They're not in the mafia, but it has a lot of the same vibes and tone. And she finally says, you know what? I'm not choosing between the two of you. I am not going to make that decision. You two are going to have to live with the fact that I want both of you, or I'm gonna have none of you. That's how this is gonna work. The spicy scenes are hot. The men are so protective of her that like, that's one of the things I love about a dark romance, is how protective the men are in these situations. And while this was like kind of my first foray into it, and I've read a lot since then, this one kind of still sticks out to me. And I originally did not have this one on my list, but I had someone message me asking about a recommendation for like a 26 and 2026, and they wanted dark romance, and this was actually the first one that kind of came to mind for me. I gave them a couple of different options, but that was like the first one that came to mind, and I was like, you know, I think that this one deserves a spot on my top of the year. I read this in March and I'm still thinking about it. All right, moving up to number 7, definitely a different tone than the previous book, but we have Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. I could probably put the entire series on here, or at least like the 2nd and 4th book, I would say, are probably my favorite ones, but I'm putting this one on here because I feel like this one reignited my love of this series. I read the first book last year, I think it was, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And I was like, it's fine. It definitely feels like a debut. I really liked the mental health representation, specifically ADHD. Like, it wasn't something that I was obsessed with. But then everyone started reading them this year with the last book coming out. And I was like, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna try this. And this book is the only book that made me cry this year, and so it has to be on this list. This one, it deals with depression representation, specifically from the male main character. And I love the fact that this synopsis, like it says Weston Ryder is a happy guy. And so like you're trying to like put on this face, this facade. And there is like a moment where he kind of breaks down and where he lets his true self show in front of her. And I think that that is so raw and so real, and something that Lila Sage does so phenomenally well. Every single one of her books has this defining moment between our characters where our character has like built up this wall and put on a mask for the other person, and at some point it gets broken. Something, you know, happens to the point where they have to let it down, and the other person still accepts them for who they are. And as someone with, you know, a lot of letters when it comes to mental health problems, it feels really validating. The fact that like you can still be a character in a romance novel with mental health issues, with chronic health issues, with, you know, whatever like XYZ problem that you have, seeing that in a romantic main character is so validating. And I don't necessarily love doing like the self-insert thing when I'm reading, but it is really easy to do when you're reading contemporary romance with, you know, whatever chronic health, mental health representation that you also share. You're like, wait, I could be this too. And I think being in a place where like I am in such a healthy relationship, I'm in a place where that happened, where I had to take the mask off, where the mask just broke. And Derek still accepts me for who I am, even with all of the baggage and the messiness that comes with me. And so seeing that relationship, seeing that just blossom in this little small town in Wyoming was just, I don't know, so validating. And I definitely teared up. I don't cry at books, okay? I read 140 something books this year, and this one is, I think, the only one that made me cry. It was like a tear, okay? I wasn't bawling. I will cry at movies and TV shows and things like that. Like I cry with like real life stuff, little minor inconveniences, but for some reason I don't cry during books. I don't know. Number 6 is an exception to the rule. Number 6 is a 2026 release. However, number 6 is also the reason why I do not film this video until the next year. Because I finished this book on New Year's Eve. Technically it was a little past midnight, but I'm not putting it into my 2026 reads because I read like 90% of it in 2025, and it was like just a little past midnight. So we're counting it in our best of 2025, even though it's 2026 release. And that is Obsidian Sky by Jill Astor. I have talked about this book a lot, and I do want to caveat, I work for this author. I do all of her social media content, and so there is a little bit of a bias here because I have like had conversations with the author. I have gotten to talk about the world and the lore and the magic system and stuff like that, technically before I even read the book, and so I really knew what it was about even going into it. So they're like, yes, there could potentially be issues in the fact that like it's not as quite easily explained. I just already knew it because I've talked to Jill, and also I have like a deep personal connection to it because I do get to help put this book into the world, which is really phenomenal. I finished this book and read the acknowledgements, and I'm in the acknowledgements of this book, which like, okay, I guess technically I started crying then too, but that was for a whole different reason. It is the first time that I have been in the acknowledgements of a book, and that feels surreal. Obsidian Sky comes out February 2nd, so like you don't have a long time to wait. This is for the fans of Fourth Wing, but who want the writing style of When the Moon Hatched or City of Brass. It has a really beautiful lyrical writing style without necessarily being purple prosy. there's a lot of descriptions about like the room that they walk into, or the, you know, the storm that is rolling in, and I feel like that just adds to the atmosphere of the book. Really helps me as a content creator, because that means I get to make even more specific, like, vibes based reels. But even as I was reading this, I was so shocked by how beautiful the writing was, how phenomenal the banter between our two main characters are. This is about a girl who goes to this magical training school to try to figure out what type of elemental magic she has. So we have water, earth, air, fire, and ether, which is kind of the dead magic, but you know, obviously we have our chosen one. So the ether magic is going to come back to life, and things are going to start happening. The rift is starting to break, and the romances between her and this other dragon rider instructor, not like necessarily like teacher, he's just a little bit ahead, and so then he's kind of like student teaching essentially and kind of mentoring her. And he's also the crown prince, so like that's cool. There's so much lore in this book. If you like really diving into a world, this is one that like I think you're gonna like. There is so much description about the magic, the history of the magic. There is this other mentor character who is the scribe and who is like the keeper of the history, which I think was kind of one of my favorite things. And also the dragons are so sassy. I love a sassy dragon. Listen, her dragon is like, next time can you hurry it up? I almost scorched a squirrel out of boredom. It's so great. I'm obsessed with this book. I cannot wait for everyone to read it in 2026. I think it's going to be big. I think it's going to be fantastic. And like, I don't know, maybe I'm just really close to it, and so that's why I love it. So that's why I want to give you the caveat. I want to give you like the little asterisk. Okay, number 5. I didn't see a ton of hype when it first came out, but I have been seeing it on a lot of other people's favorite books of the year. So that makes me excited. It makes me think that like, okay, maybe I'm not super crazy. So number 5 is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This book was so much fun, and I think that the reason why I resonated with this book so much was because I grew up very religious, and so seeing this almost like biblical retelling was really interesting. So this takes place in the city of Nineveh, which, like, if you know what that is, then it kind of makes sense. It's like, you know, the underbelly of this kingdom, of this world, and we have these demons. And this is Lilith's story, which Lilith is not a character that you learn a lot about when you're growing up in church, because, you know, she didn't have like a real great reputation in the Bible, and so you don't learn a lot about her, at least in a positive light. And so this is just quite fascinating as like the protagonist. I'm obsessed with the show Lucifer, and so this also kind of gives those same vibes, but different. Obviously, like, we're not in modern day LA, but it is an urban fantasy. If you liked Crescent City, if you liked those vibes, those like dark underbelly type of settings, you're gonna like this book. Also, if you've deconstructed from religion and you're wanting to see it more in like this fictional light, you'll like this book. This is a slow burn story. I don't think that we had like a ton of smut early on, and I do think that we will see more as the series progresses. I think we'll see the relationship develop a lot more, but we also have a really interesting supporting cast that surround our main characters that you really grow to love and fear and feel for, and like something happens early on and you're stressed about it, and you feel what the characters feel. So I'm really happy that I love this one. I'm so excited to read the next book in the series. It's going to be a good time, and I definitely want to read more from Scarlett St. Clair after reading this one. I read her King of Battle and Blood series last year, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that like I was obsessed with. But now after reading this one, I definitely want to read more of her backlist. This feels like a really basic book to put on my top books of the year. It feels very unoriginal, but it's also just true. So I can't not talk about it. I'm gonna put it here. My number 4 spot is going to go to Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This book is perfection. It is phenomenal. I read this also while on that same work trip. So that was a good week for reading, but I listened to it as an audiobook, and I was at a hotel about 10 minutes away from the conference where I had like to walk 10 minutes every single morning and then in the afternoon walk all the way back. And so this just became my audiobook while I was walking. And I do remember one evening while I was in the middle of it, walking in circles because I was like, well, I'm not done. I can't put this down. And I could have just like sat on my bed in the hotel and continued to listen to it, but like, why not also get my steps in? I had a lot of emotions, okay? I didn't cry from this book, but I had so much rage. I had so much rage in this book. This is the second Quarter Quell. It takes place 25 years before Catching Fire. And so you already know it's going to be a really big book, or it's going to be a really big Hunger Games because it's the Quarter Quell. We also already kind of knew a lot of what was happening in this book because of the original trilogy. We know Haymitch wins because he's alive in the original trilogy. He is the mentor. The winners are mentors. And so, like, we kind of went into this being like, well, what new information are we gonna get? And oh boy, did we get some new information. And this has set the bar so high for dystopian stories because of how much lore, how much world building, how much setup we get in this book. And we really know how the government works, why it works the way that it does, and why there is this revolution that is happening. And it can be a little frustrating because you're seeing a lot of the same things in this book that then again happen in Hunger Games and specifically in Catching Fire. If Catching Fire was your favorite of the trilogy, this one is going to hit so hard for you. But I think it really shines a light. It really kind of brings up a mirror for us to look at, in that history is slow to change, and how these things that were starting to get enacted in here don't actually come to fruition for another 25 years in Catching Fire. And I don't know, like, that was just so cool to read. And I want to know what Suzanne Collins' office looks like, because it's gotta be red strings everywhere, right? It's gotta be. There's so many things that get connected, and there's things that you see that you originally saw in the first series, and then you're now seeing them as young characters, and you're like, this is why they're like that. This is why this happens. And like, it's so good. And I want to know, like, did she originally have this story plotted, or at least an idea in her head when she was writing the original one? Or is it something that kind of just worked and it kind of just expanded? And I don't know, but whatever it is, this is magic. It'll make you mad, it'll make you upset. Like, the range of emotions that you will have during this book is a lot. Like, protect your mental health for sure, but as someone living in America in 2026, where we are seeing history taking a long time to change, but we start seeing the little things that pop up and the little glimmers of hope, but then like they get squashed down. It's a reality check. This is the book that I wanted. This was so good. And after the frustration of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes when it came out and how most people didn't really like that story, now going back to it, I think that it was important. When you see it as its own entity, you're like, what was she doing? Why was she doing this? But now as you're seeing this one, and then I am very curious if she is going to like close out another prequel trilogy, if we're going to see even more stuff come to fruition. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm so excited to see this as a movie. I think it's going to be so phenomenal. The problem with filming these videos is that when I love a book, I can't shut up about it. And so I have been filming this for over an hour. We still have 3 books to go, and they're my favorite 3 books of the year, so I'm probably gonna yap about them quite a bit. But here we go. I'm sorry. I hope you got something to drink. Number 3 is a book that I read in January for Booktuber favorites, which is so cool because I read somebody else's favorite book of 2024 and now it's sitting on my favorite books of 2025. Maybe someone will read it. I don't know. It's not a new book, so maybe not. But my number 3 pick is a little horror novella called Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. Oh my god, this book is so wild. It's a sapphic horror romance, which doesn't sound like something that should go together, but it works so well. And the cool thing about this book, the thing that I think Delilah does so well, is how she toys with your emotions during this book. This book could either have been a rom-com or a horror based on little tiny decisions. And it starts out like it could be a rom-com, right? We have this one girl who is at a farmer's market and she's new to town and she's just kind of like looking at the local stuff that is happening. And then we have another girl who's trying to sell her plants and her cupcakes and, you know, her other stuff at this farmer's market, and they meet and it's cute. It's so adorable. The next week they come back and they meet up again, and she's made a cupcake specifically for her based on some things that she found out, and it's like, oh my god, it's so cute. It could be adorable. They are soulmates, right? But you know going into this it's a horror book. And so when she says, do you want to come back to the house one day? Do you want to have dinner with me? You're like, oh no, don't do that. That's how horror movies start. That things are gonna go south really fast, and they do. It is so ominous, so quietly horrific, so soft, but so terrifying. And I listened to this book almost like in one day at work. I was sitting there like listening. I listened to the last 20 minutes of it actually on my drive home, and I mean, I'm glad that I wasn't sitting at my desk because my jaw was on the floor and I couldn't keep a straight face for what was happening. But also, like, it would have been cool to have that actually, like, you know, filmed. Plot twist that happens at the very end, even I didn't see coming. Again, I really like it when an author can do that. I also think Delilah is one of the sweetest human beings on the planet. I actually got to meet her this year at San Diego Comic-Con when I was there with my sister, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna go to this book signing because she was there, and she was so sweet. There was nobody in the line at the signing because I went right at the end, and we like sat and chat for like maybe 5-10 minutes just about like different things about this book, about her other books. I also read Guillotine this year. I'm really excited to read more from her. I have a full-length horror, or maybe kind of like a thriller horror on my TBR. I also have a Star Wars book on my TBR that I'm excited about as well, but I've only read her novellas. So I'll be curious to see what her like full-length stories look like next year. Number 2, I'm kind of using as a placeholder for an entire author because I binged her work this year. So I'm putting a book on here that was the start of that binge because that's kind of what kicked everything into high gear. And then I bought almost her entire backlist and have read about a third of it already, just from like June on. So I'm going to be putting The Marriage Effect by Karla Sorensen as my number 2 read, and simply because like this closed out one trilogy, but it opened up a world of possibilities for me. I would say that like this is probably not my favorite of the books that I've read from her, but I'm putting it in the spot just because of the significance that it holds in my reading this year. I did give this one 5 stars. It was phenomenal. I obviously wouldn't have gone down the rabbit hole if I didn't love this one as much. Specifically, oh my god, the ending of it. It's again that mental health representation, that letting somebody in, that realizing that like you can do life on your own. You are fully capable. You are a strong, independent woman. But what if someone did it alongside you? What if that was cool? So this is the 3rd book in the Washington Wolves series, and I think I read the second one like 2 years ago. I read it for like a football romance vlog during the Super Bowl, the first year that Taylor was dating Travis and they were at the Super Bowl, because I wanted to do like a Super Bowl vlog. And I didn't love that one. It wasn't like my favorite tropes or anything, so then these ones just sat on the shelf. And then I read this one during Amazing Readathon just as like a random book. I don't even remember why I picked it up. I was just like, I want a football romance. So I picked this one up, and I read like 3 of her books in one weekend. That's how far deep I went into this rabbit hole, because I finished this book. I like did a little Instagram story of like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with this book. I'm obsessed, da da da. And Karla replied to it, and then we started chatting on Instagram. She's a Lions fan, which is really cool because they have that in common. And then I went on her website because I was like, oh, what else does she write? I wasn't expecting to be in the same world. I wasn't expecting for me to be able to continue things. I was just like, I liked her writing. Let's see what else she has. Then I found out that she has a 2nd generation. So each one of the main characters in the original trilogy have kids or siblings or like something that kind of goes farther out. And so then I read the second generation for the first one, for the third one, which is like the sisters of our main character. So each one of those girls have a book. That was 4 books. And then there's another trilogy that I'm in the middle of, and then another one that I have not gotten to yet. And then she has other stuff that's like in another world. But everything is very football adjacent or sports adjacent, which I think has definitely become my favorite subgenre of contemporary romance. And so I couldn't not put this book on here, because this was the start of the rabbit hole. This was the start of falling down the spiral. I'm not planning on going anywhere next year. Like, she has, like from here to the end of the shelf is all Carla's books, and I've only read about half of them. So I have a lot of work left to do in 2026, but I'm excited about it. Number 1 is not going to be a surprise to anyone. Much like House of Bane and Blood, in 2024, when I became obsessed with that series, I also became obsessed with this series. I became obsessed with this author, not in a creepy way, but just in a way of like, I want to read everything that she writes. I'm excited for her 2026 release. I have another series that I need to continue, but it's also a little bit of a cheat because I am putting a whole series as number 1, but I will tell you which one is my favorite of the 3. But that is the Legacy series by Melissa K. Rorick. So we have Reign of Shadows and Endings, we have Storm of Secrets and Sorrow, and then my personal favorite, which is going to be my number 1 book of 2025, Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance. This is the 3rd book in the series, so I'm not going to like talk to you about what is in this one specifically, but let's just talk about book number 1 and the series as a whole. This is a dark romantasy. It is a lot darker than I think people realize going into it, and like, please go check the trigger warnings for this book. It's not light and fluffy. This book is for the like dark romance readers that want to get into romantasy, because there is some very dubious consent, specifically in the first book, because our main character Tessa is bonded to Theon, and Theon is able to use her powers as Fae because they are bonded together. She does not want to be bonded. She didn't think she would be chosen, and so she doesn't want this bond. She wants to go home. And so she fights it. Even though it causes her physical pain, she fights it. And Theon has the power to force her to do things, but he doesn't. He lets her have her own autonomy because he doesn't want to be like his father. And in the first book, and then starting into the second one, she's a little bit of a timid mouse. You start seeing things kind of pop up during the second one where she is like, okay, I can do things. I am stronger than people think I am. But in this book, oh my God, Tessa is such a badass. She is so strong, so like, she's unforgiving. She is taking no prisoners. She is owning her power. And I always tell people, like, because I saw a lot of people talking about book 1 specifically at the beginning of the year, and they were like, I don't know if I want to continue because like it was really good, the writing is really strong, the world building is fantastic, the magic is really unique, but I really had a problem with the non-consensual atmosphere. And I was like, oh no, you have to continue, because not only is it that like he actually isn't forcing her to do anything, but by the end, oh boy, does she come into her own. She comes into her power. She has authority. It is, oh, it's so good. I am in the middle of book 4 right now. I was really hoping to finish it by the end of the year so that I could say like I read an entire series, and like that series is sitting in my number 1 spot. Unfortunately, it's an 800-page book, and I only got about 30% of the way into it, even though I've had the book since like September. But book 4 is continuing that. We're really also seeing a lot of the other side characters. We're really starting to see them have their own stories, which is really cool, because I think those are going to play bigger roles in her other series that she is writing. We have like the Melissa K. Rorick verse, where like every series is kind of interconnected in some way. It doesn't really matter where you start, you're going to find clues and things from other books. And I think that that is phenomenal. I think that that's such a smart way to write a universe and a world, because you get to have these new characters, you get to play with new things, but you're still kind of like interconnecting things in this grand universe. And I just think like it creates this big fandom, and I don't know, like it's a really smart marketing technique, but also it's really cool for readers because you get to pick up Easter eggs. And with that, I keep wanting to say, and with that, the 2025 season comes to a close, because I have TikTok brain, and that's all I've been hearing for the last week. But with that, that's my favorite books of 2025. I am losing my voice. I actually lost my voice completely yesterday, so I'm glad that I had at least this much of a voice. But I hope that you've had a wonderful 2025. I hope your reading year was fantastic. If you know, down below, let me know your favorite book of 2025. Or if you don't want to share it publicly, if you just want to, you know, share books that you loved. Share a book that you loved. Doesn't have to be your absolute favorite. That's fine. If you're not feeling chatty, do like the dagger or the sword emoji for Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance. And if you want to see where we're going in 2026, I'm going to put a couple of videos up here with some of my end of year content if you missed it. I have big plans for 2026. I am so excited about it, and I hope you are too. I hope you are ready to take the journey with me. That is all I have for you today. If you are new here and have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Threads, TikTok, and my Patreon are linked down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.